It's starting to become clear now. There's too many discrepancies in this story. It's not making sense. People are over here in the building, and then people are over there. And that guy saw that guy up in that building, but then that guy saw one coming out that way, and he went onto the bus. We need clarification. Welcome to part 3. The sniper's nest.
Following a quick sweep of the roof, Roy Trulley and Marion Baker returned to the ground floor of the Book Depository.
What did you do when you got back to the first floor, or what did you see?
When I got back to the first floor, at first I didn't see anything except officers running around, reporters in the place. There was a regular madhouse.
Had they sealed off the building yet, do you know?
I am sure they had.
Then what?
Then, in a few minutes, it could have been moments or minutes at a time like that, I noticed some of my boys were over in the west corner of the shipping department, and there were several officers over there taking their names and addresses and so forth. I noticed that Lee Oswald was not among these boys.
Oswald was not the only absentee, but he was the only one whom Trulley knew for a fact had left the building after the shooting. Meanwhile, on the 6th floor, a stack of boxes in the
He was on the bus. Got out of there. He's gone.
southeast corner attracted the attention of Deputy Luke Mooney.
I went straight across to the southeast corner of the building, and I saw these high boxes. And the minute I squeezed between these two stacks of boxes, I had to turn myself sideways to get in there. That is when I saw the expended
Packed.
shells, and the boxes that were stacked up looked to be a rest for the weapon.
There was a shooter. 2 shots. Although some people said it was 3.
2
Starting to
meters
add up.
west of the sniper's nest, authorities found a bottle of Dr. Pepper and some chicken bones, leftovers from the lunch eaten by Bonnie Williams shortly before the assassination. But
I literally had a Dr. Pepper and chicken today.
according to some officers, including Mooney, remains of a similar meal
What does it mean?
were also found in the sniper's nest.
Does this photograph show any place where you saw the chicken bone?
If I recall correctly, the chicken bone could have been laying on this box, or it might have been laying on this box right here. There was one of them partially
Where was
eaten,
the chicken
and there
bone?
was a little small paper poke.
By poke, you mean a paper sack.
Right. The
What's a
assassin
paper
could
poke?
just maybe take one step and lay it over there if he was the one that put it there.
In spite of this, no such items were ever photographed. Apart from the sack of chicken bones found here, there are no records of leftovers being recovered from anywhere else near the sniper's nest.
He ate them all. He's a hungry
Now,
boy.
Did you see a chicken bone over near the boxes in the southeast corner?
I don't believe there was one there.
You didn't see any. One witness, a deputy sheriff
How did you
named
not
Luke
see?
Mooney, said he found a piece of chicken partly eaten on top of one of the boxes. Did you see anything like that?
No,
Was anything like that called to your attention?
I can't recall anything like that.
But it wasn't just the chicken bones. There were similar disagreements regarding the 3 cartridge cases. According to Mooney, Dallas Police Captain William Fritz tampered with the evidence.
Are those the empty shells you found?
Yes, sir.
Now, will you take this marker and encircle the shells?
All right.
They were turned over to Captain Fritz?
Yes, sir. He was the first officer that picked him up, as far as I know, because I stood there and watched him go over and pick him up and look at him.
Is this the position of the cartridges?
He moved the
as shown
evidence?
in this photograph as you saw them?
Yes, sir. That is just about the way they were laying. To
Okay,
the best of my
okay.
knowledge. I do know there was one further away, and these other 2 were relatively close to each other on this particular area.
That's weird.
But these cartridges, this one and this one, looks like they are further apart than they actually was.
Now, I didn't quite understand. Did you say that it was your memory that A and B were not that close together?
Just from my memory, it seems that this cartridge ought to have been over this way a little further.
You mean the B cartridge should be closer to the C?
Closer to the
They're
sea.
evenly
Yes,
displaced?
sir.
Would that happen because you're shooting, right? And the shots are quick. I mean, you gotta shoot and then bolt action and then do all that. So it's like they're at different angles because it's like one shot, Kennedy's moving more, another shot's going to be at that angle, and then if we're going with a third shot, boom, 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 evenly displaced. Dude, that should be in
did not
forensics.
explicitly state, but strongly implied that Captain Fritz moved at least one of the cartridge cases before they were photographed. According to Fritz,
Come on.
he did everything by the book.
Dude, that's
I told him
101.
not to move the cartridges,
Detective work.
not to touch anything till we could get the crime lab to take pictures of them, just as they were lying there. And I left an officer assigned there to see that that was done. And the crime lab came almost immediately and took pictures and dusted the shells for prints.
Amidst the
That
swarm
does sound
of
exactly
officers
like the
canvassing
picture.
the 6th floor was a lone journalist by the name of Thomas Ollier. Ollier was equipped with a camera and actually filmed much of the frantic search effort. About 3 decades later, Ollier made some rather startling claims that were largely consistent with, but also expanded upon those
All we
made
found is the damn chemistry textbook.
by Mooney.
After filming the casings, I asked Captain Fritz, who was standing at my side, if I could go behind the barricade and get a close-up shot of the casings. He told me that it would be better if I got my shots from outside the barricade. He then rounded the pile of boxes and entered the enclosure. This was the first time anybody walked between the barricade and the windows. Fritz then walked to the casings, picked them up, and held them in his hand over the top of the boxes for me to get a close-up shot of the evidence. I filmed about 8 seconds of a close-up shot of the shell casings in Captain Fritz's
Dude, you
hand.
document
Well, these
everything before you
alleged
move.
portion-
I've seen Dexter. These guys are shady.
Of Ollier's film have never surfaced. Preservation took a back seat while the film was being prepared for broadcast. Portions of the film were carelessly chopped up and discarded, and fragmentary clips are all that remains today.
This is a Bush League
In any case,
operation.
after supposedly filming the casings in the hand of Captain Fritz, Ollier recalled how they were deceitfully returned to the floor.
Over 30 minutes later, Captain Fritz reached into his pocket and handed the casings to Detective Robert Studebaker. Studebaker never saw the original placement of the casings, so he tossed them on the floor and photographed them.
To counterbalance these allegations of foul play, I must also mention that there were those who found nothing amiss about the cartridge cases.
Did you see a picture
We
taken
need
of the
more
holes?
about the cartridge cases.
Yes, sir.
When the picture was taken, were the holes in the same
Get to the
position as
bottom of
when you
this
had first seen them?
Bull crap.
Yes, sir, they were.
Even Mooney sort of agreed that the casings had not been moved, immediately after explaining that they had been moved. In the testimony we heard a few minutes ago, Mooney was shown this photograph. He then examined this one, taken from a different angle, before being shown this one. Now, these two are just differently cropped copies of the same photograph.
Drop and zoom.
I have another picture. Here is a picture taken, also from another angle. Does that show the cartridges?
Somebody screwed up on the protocol and then tried to make it look like they didn't screw up. We got multiple photos, and it's just 1964 photo editing techniques.
Yes, sir.
Now, compare that with the other photograph.
Yes, sir.
Is that about the way it looked?
Yes, sir. That is right. It sure is.
That doesn't really gel with the casing supposedly being picked up and haphazardly tossed back on the floor, as Thomas Ollier would claim decades later. While there are question marks surrounding the chicken bones in the cartridge cases, there can be no doubt that some of the boxes in the sniper's nest were moved prior to being photographed.
Do you have any pictures of
I mean,
the
they were
boxes
looking
near
around,
the
that
window
makes sense, I
before they
guess.
were moved, other than those you have showed me?
Just these two.
Then you don't have any pictures taken of the boxes before they were moved.
No.
Now, I will show you another picture. Was that taken by you?
Amateur.
Yes.
Does that show the position of the boxes before or after they were moved?
That's after they were dusted. There's fingerprint dust on every box.
And they were not in that position then when you first saw them?
No.
It looks like it could be like, I don't know, with that positioning, whether Oswald did that himself, it could be kind of useful for, you know, setting up your sniper shot, right? You got your elbow, you got something to lean on for stability, you know what I mean?
Several minutes
getting
after the
wild.
sniper's nest was discovered, a bolt-action rifle was found between two rows of boxes near the stairway. Now, there was some initial confusion regarding its make and model. Some thought it looked like a Mauser, but upon closer inspection, it
A
was
Mauser.
identified as an Italian Carcano. The officer who misidentified the rifle later
Those all
explained that
suck.
he did so at a glance. However, over a decade after the assassination in
Can't believe anybody
1976, a former
someone with
deputy
any of
sheriff
those.
by the name of Roger Craig claimed to have seen the marking 7.65 Mauser stamped right on the barrel of the rifle. To some, this is evidence that a Mauser was in fact discovered on the 6th floor before being swapped for a Carcano. But Craig was the only person to make this specific claim, did so many years after the assassination, and after telling a journalist the following.
Did you handle that rifle on the 6th floor?
Greg's weird.
Yes, I did. I couldn't give its name because I don't know foreign rifles. I know it was foreign made, and you loaded it downward
An
into
American
a built-in
gun.
clip. But there was another rifle, a Mauser, found up on the roof of the depository that afternoon.
There were no reports of a Mauser being found on the roof either. Besides, the only rifle seen in the film taken by Thomas Ollier is unmistakably a Carcano.
This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. This is Roger Craig. Get him out of here.
Unique markings on the cartridge cases would later prove that this was
You're
indeed the
in over
rifle
your head.
from which all three had been fired. Before the day was over, the rifle had been traced to a company in Chicago, Illinois.
That's for
The
Prince?
company had sold the rifle to someone named A. Hiddell and shipped it to a post office box in Dallas in early 1963. Alec James Hiddell was a pseudonym known to have been used by Oswald.
Case closed. See everybody. Still here? All right.
So there was now a direct link between the shells, the rifle, and Oswald. Not only that, but Oswald's prints were lifted from both the rifle and boxes
Of
in the
course, he
sniper's
takes
nest.
pictures of himself.
Apart from
I
the
don't think
spent-
Oswald had any intention of like hiding and like having this like grand getaway. He's gonna get away with it. He's gonna leave the country. He's gonna do all this. So much of this stuff was done so haphazardly for an assassin that it's like he had a death wish, pretty much. It was already really sus, the interview they had with his wife and how she was talking about him. It wasn't really fond.
and shells and the rifle, authorities discovered one other key piece of evidence.
Did you find anything else up in the southeast corner of the 6th floor?
Yes, sir. We found this brown paper sack, or case. It was made out of heavy wrapping paper. Actually, it looks similar to the paper that those books in the building was wrapped in. It was just a long, narrow paper bag.
Useful,
The bag was alleged to have
repurposed.
been found here, yet this space is suspiciously empty in all the crime scene photographs.
Was it long enough for the
How
whole
long
rifle,
was
though?
the paper bag, approximately?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I don't know. I picked it up and dusted it for prints, and they took
have
it
to be
down there
long.
and sent it to Washington.
Though.
That's the last I'd seen of it, and I don't know.
Did you take a picture of it before you picked it up?
No.
Does that sack show in any of the pictures you took?
No, it doesn't show in any of the pictures.
Detective
This guy
Robert
sucks.
Studebaker,
They
who'd
all
been working
suck.
as a
I hope they were all fired. Like, just push the reset button on the the homicide department of the Dallas Police Department. Y'all suck.
forensic assistant for less than 2 months, neglected to explain why he never photographed the bag. In Studebaker's defense, no one was on the lookout for a brown paper bag. Assassin, sure, rifle, casings, absolutely,
So,
but
I mean-
some debris in a dark lit corner of the room.
That does answer that question. I mean, that's rifle length, so you had to get it in there. And then they say in the earlier parts that he had come in the day with packaging. Nobody thought anything of it because it's like, it's literally a warehouse. Everything is in packages.
It wasn't until the bag was picked up and inspected that its significance became apparent.
Yeah.
Do you remember anything about
Go
what the
Elwin.
sack looked like?
Well, it was assumed at the time that it was the sack that the rifle was wrapped up in when
Okay.
it was brought into the building, and it appeared that it could have been used for that.
Now, as you may recall,
Makes
Wesley
sense.
Frazier drove Oswald back to Irving on November the 21st to pick up some curtain rods. The following morning, Oswald was seen carrying a package by both Frazier and his sister, Linnie Randall.
See, that's why he said curtain rods, because curtain rods could be about the same length, right? Curtain rods could totally be the same length for that packaging.
According to Frazier, Oswald told him the package contained curtain rods, which he then brought back to Dallas. But you may also recall that Jack Doherty denied seeing such a package.
Did you see Oswald come to work that morning?
Yes, when he first came into the door.
Did he have anything in his hands or arms?
Well,
Not gonna
not that
remember
I could
that.
see of.
The thing is, Doherty was not a reliable witness.
No.
When questioned by the FBI and Secret Service, he appeared very confused about times and places. He required assistance from his father due to considerable difficulty in coordinating his mental faculties with his speech. While Doherty denied having such issues, his testimony is nonetheless riddled with contradictions.
Maybe he just can't remember stuff. The dude just doesn't have that kind of brain, all right?
Wait a minute.
Might
Did
be
you
delusional,
go to
I don't know.
lunch?
Well, I went back downstairs to eat lunch. Yes, sir.
What time?
Oh, it was 12 o'clock.
Wait a minute. Did you hear the shots before or after your lunch?
Before
time did it
I ate
happen
my
again?
lunch.
You heard shots before you ate your lunch.
Let's see. Yes, I believe I did.
Now, did you hear a shot either before or after lunch?
It was before lunch. It was before lunch.
You think it was before lunch you heard the shot?
I believe it was. Yes, sir.
While Doherty insisted that Oswald had nothing in his hands when he arrived at work, it turned out that this certitude was based on nothing but a glance.
I'm becoming more and more convinced that like testimony of things, just this like human testimony of events, especially things like this that may seem kind of minor in a way, are just like unreliable. I mean, thank heavens for, you know, videos now and live footage and stuff like that. It's like a hard, like the further you go back in history, how hard it was to solve crimes. Like seriously, think about it. Especially even just like before, like the forensics, the stuff that we have now, where you can do the fingerprinting and all that stuff. And it was nothing but just hearsay and conjecture and this person's testimony versus this person's testimony. How you would solve anything is beyond me.
Now, is that a very definite impression that you saw Oswald that morning when he came to work?
Well, it's like this. I'll try to explain it to you this way. You see, I was sitting on the wrapping table, and when he came in the door, I just caught him out of the corner of my eye.
Yeah.
Given that Fraser had eyes on Oswald for several minutes, the weight of evidence suggests he carried a package to work on the morning of November the 22nd. A far more contentious question is whether the package carried by Oswald was the same as the brown paper bag discovered on the 6th floor. According to both Randall and
There's probably-
Fraser, the
could
only
have been
two
multiple
witnesses known
things.
to have seen the package, the answer was a definite no.
Now, was the length of the package any similar to the bag? Anywhere near similar?
Well, it wasn't that long. I mean, it was folded down at the top, as I told you. It definitely wasn't that long.
I told the FBI that as far as the length of the bag, I told them that was entirely too long.
Their main source of contention was that the
Too
package
long?
carried by Oswald was shorter than the brown paper bag. The bag was just long enough to store the rifle in its disassembled state, so if the package carried by Oswald was much shorter, then it could not have contained the rifle. Except Randall saw it briefly at a distance through a window,
Well,
while Fraser never paid it much attention.
you can see, like, I mean, from the, let me go back here, you can see from this, the additions that went onto it, right? You can extend the barrel, like they're showing you all that stuff there. So the, you know, it doesn't have to exactly look like a fully put together rifle, just enough to have the different parts, which, you know, probably did. I mean, if you look at that approximate length, so with just the stock and stuff, like you can get that in there.
Briefly at a distance
It's
through
only
a window,
approximate length.
while Fraser never paid it much attention.
Did it look to you as if there was something heavy in the package?
Well, I'll be frank with you, I didn't pay much attention to the package.
Of course.
In fact, the length of the package seemed about as certain to Fraser as his lack of attention to it.
I didn't pay much attention. I didn't pay too much attention. I didn't pay any attention to it. I didn't pay much attention to the
Packages
package.
in
I
a
didn't look
building
at the
that holds
package very much.
packages.
Like I say, I didn't pay that much attention to it. I didn't pay too much attention to how he carried the package at all.
That's fair.
The tape and paper with which the brown paper bag had been constructed matched the tape and paper used to wrap books for shipping on the first floor of the Book the Paul story. Not only that, but a fingerprint and palm print matching that of Oswald were also found on the bag. In spite of all this, some authors refused to accept that the brown paper bag and the package carried by Oswald were one and the same. Instead, the argument tends to be that the bag was fabricated by authorities in an effort to frame Oswald. But you then have to square that against no curtain rods being found inside the Book depository, Oswald already having curtains in his rented room in Dallas, him failing
Those
to...
are pretty ugly curtains, all right? He just needed the rods, right? He just needed the rods. Those rods are pretty bent. Oswald might be onto some. Those are some crappy, dilapidated looking curtains, all right? Look at that. You should replace those.
Permission from his landlady to redecorate. Him supposedly being in such urgent need of curtain rods that he just had to return to Irving on Thursday instead of waiting just one more day.
He's just got
him
style.
neglecting to mention anything about curtain rods to his wife and Ruth Payne upon his arrival, and that's despite the fact that Payne actually had some spare curtain rods in her garage. The same garage where Oswald stored his rifle.
How did you learn of the shooting of President Kennedy?
I was watching television and Ruth said someone had shot at the president.
What did you say?
It was hard for me to say anything. We both turned pale. I went to my room and cried.
Did you think immediately that your husband might have been involved?
No.
Did Mrs.
Now, my
Payne
husband's
say
too stupid
anything
to
about
pull
the
that off.
possibility of your husband being involved?
No, but she only said that, by the way, they fired from the building in which Lee is working. My heart dropped. I then went to the garage to see whether the rifle was there, and I saw that the blanket was still there, and I said, thank God.
What?
Did you look in the blanket to see if the rifle was there?
I didn't
he's not-
unroll the
he's not
blanket.
gonna take the
It
blanket
was in
with
its
him.
usual position, and it appeared to have something inside.
When did you learn that the rifle was not in the blanket?
When the police arrived and asked whether my husband had a rifle, and I said yes.
Then what happened?
Did they go find
They
it?
began to search the apartment. When they came to the garage and took the blanket, I thought, well, now they will find it. They opened the blanket, but there was no rifle there.
It's over. It's over. It's over. It's
Around the
Jover.
time of the rifle's discovery on the 6th floor of the Book depository, Captain William Fritz was appraised of Oswald's absence. Fritz immediately left the building and returned to police headquarters.
We were standing in the hallway when Captain Fritz walked in. He walked up to my colleagues and made the statement to them, "Go get a search warrant and pick up a man named Lee Oswald." And I asked the captain why he wanted him.
Wait, didn't they just search his place without arrest warrant? They just searched the apartment, right? The building, his house, went in his garage, looking through stuff without a warrant, right? Am I mixing that timeline up? Have they gone back in time now? And then they had it by the time they went to speak with the wife and go to the house?
And he said, well, he was employed down at the Book depository and he had not been present for a roll call of employees. And we said, Captain, we will save you a trip because there he sits.
Got him. Got him. All right, I think we'll do one, which is 20 minutes.
After escaping
You know what? We're going to cut it there. There is 26, 27 minutes left. Yeah, we'll cut it. What do you guys think? Much more time. 21. There are 10 minutes. You know, I don't want to do all of it. I can't do all of it right now. What if we're doing? We'll call it. No, we'll watch it.
Escaping the Book
Let's
depository,
watch this last chapter.
Oswald
Last-
boarded the
or
bus
this-
right
this
about
chapter
here. But the assassination ground traffic to a halt, so Oswald soon left the bus and hailed a cab. After returning to his rooming house in Oak Cliff, a neighborhood in
Wait, sorry, I
South,
missed this.
the
What did he
bus
do?
and hailed a cab. But
was
the
on the-
assassination ground traffic to a halt, so Oswald soon left the bus and hailed a cab.
Okay.
After returning to his rooming house in
I want to know how. So, like, it said that he went downstairs after he shot the president. Goes downstairs really quickly. It sounds like because people weren't seeing him down the stairs. And then he got on the bus immediately. I was wondering about this, and I said this in the previous video. Like, is the bus just doing like normal stops while the crowd is probably freaking out all over the place? It's like, you know what I mean?
No cliff.
The bus was right there, right? In the corner of the building, or maybe a room,
Oswald changed his
streetway or
clothes,
so.
grabbed a gun, and left in a hurry.
78. You are in the Oak Cliff area, are you not? The line's too low. You will be at large for any emergency that comes in. 10-4.
Police patrolman J.D. Tippett encountered Oswald some 45 minutes after the shooting, a bit further south, right about here. As soon as Tippett stepped out of the vehicle, Oswald drew his gun and fired 4 shots in rapid succession.
Hello, police operator. Go ahead, it says news. Hello, we've had a shooting out here.
Wait. Okay, so they didn't find the gun. The gun wasn't at the location. The bag was. He kept the gun with him. He goes down the stairs. It's on the bus with the gun, but left the wrapping, left the covering for it. I think I'm missing details. How's that possible?
It's a police officer. Somebody shot him. What's this? 10th Street. 78. It's in a police car. Notify 1.
Blood splatter.
The officer involved in the shooting, which Officer J.D. typically believes was pronounced DOA at Methodist 128. Well, any indication that it has any connection with this other shooting? Well, the descriptions on the suspects are similar. It is possible.
Oswald was then caught sneaking into a nearby movie theater without purchasing a ticket.
Spam information that's 8.
Presidential assassinations in theaters. JFK. Lee Harvey Oswald. Okay. Abraham Lincoln. You following me here? They're all coming back together. Oh my God.
Suspect just
Let's
went
get
in the
close.
Texas theater on West Jefferson. Simple.
Both
A large
guys
contingent
go by 3 names. Lee Harvey Oswald.
of officers descended upon the theater. They surrounded the building, switched on the lights, and approached the suspect. Flanked by officers, Oswald drew a gun, and a brief scuffle ensued. But this time he was quickly subdued, handcuffed, and taken to police headquarters back in downtown Dallas. Over the next 2 days, between his arrest and untimely death, Lee Harvey Oswald was interrogated by members of the Dallas police.
John Wilkes Booth, Lee Harvey Oswald, shoot a president, go to a theater.
FBI, Secret Service, among others.
Although they reversed that. One's leaving a theater, one's going in.
Did you have any tape recorders?
No, sir. I don't have a tape recorder. We need one. If we had one at this time, we could have handled these conversations far better.
Bush
The
League
Dallas Police Department
Police
doesn't have
Department.
one.
No, sir.
The biggest cities in the
I have requested
country.
one several times, but so far they haven't gotten me one.
So no one knows exactly what was said inside this room. Instead, we have to settle for the cliff notes. And of especial interest to us is Oswald's alibi.
These people have given me a hearing without legal representation or anything. Did you shoot the president? I didn't shoot anybody, no, sir.
You just heard Oswald, who said he did not shoot anybody.
Oswald vehemently denied any involvement in the assassination.
There he is.
Instead, he claimed to have eaten lunch with two co-workers on the first floor of the Book Depository. One of them was a black co-worker whose name Oswald could not recall.
Didn't they already say that wasn't the case?
The other was James Jarman.
Let them speak for
Were
themselves.
you with anybody when you were walking around on the first floor finishing your sandwich?
No, I wasn't. I was trying to get through so I could get out on the street.
Did you see Lee Oswald?
No, I didn't.
After his arrest, he stated to a police officer that he had had lunch with you. Did you have lunch with him?
No, sir, I didn't.
But according to another interrogator, Oswald's claim was not to have eaten lunch with Jarman and this unnamed co-worker, but merely that he saw them pass through the lunchroom while he was eating.
Those are very different
he had
things.
eaten lunch in the lunchroom at the Texas School Book Depository alone, but recalled possibly two black employees walking through the room during this period. He stated possibly one of these employees was called Junior, and the other was a short individual whose name he could not recall, but whom he would be able to recognize.
Nobody knows anyone's name.
So according to this...
I know this place has a lot of employees, but like, nobody knows what's going on that works at the Texas School Textbook Depository building. Just no one is cognizant.
Version of events, Oswald's alibi was that he possibly saw two co-workers, one whose name he could not recall, enter and traverse the lunchroom together or separately
He may
during
have.
an
I mean, yeah, it doesn't
unspecified
mean
period
eating
of
with
time.
them.
Whether
They can't
Oswald
account for
claimed
it.
to have eaten lunch with or in proximity of his colleagues, it makes no difference because neither alibi could be substantiated.
Right.
Instead, James Jarman had last seen Oswald taking an elevator upstairs sometime between 11:30 and 12 o'clock. William Shelley and Eddie Piper had last seen Oswald roaming about the first floor around noon, at which time Oswald had told Piper that he was either going out or going up to eat lunch. Then there's the account of Charles Givens.
Didn't they say, am I wrong? Did they say before that, like, no one, it seemed like, knew Oswald's name except for the guy that, like, drives him, right? But, it kind of sounded, I don't know if they said this, that he doesn't, like, eat lunch with anybody, ever, in the lunchroom. He does his own thing.
You may recall that Givens is officially...
Didn't they say that day he didn't bring his lunch? Didn't they say something about that earlier? Like, he didn't even bring a lunch?
recognized as the
Let me
last
know, am I
person
tripping
inside
here?
the book depository known to have seen Oswald before the assassination. Their encounter was fixed at 11:55 and is supposed to have taken place on the 6th floor. But prior to relating this version of events, Givens had reportedly told the FBI that he saw Oswald on the 1st floor at 11:50, a statement which he later denied ever making. Either way, Oswald being on the 1st floor at noon does absolutely nothing to prevent him from being on the 6th half an hour later.
Yeah.
Unless
That's what I was wondering too, because the shooting didn't happen while they were eating lunch. You know what I mean? They were already all scattered throughout the building, right? They were all over the place. But like, yeah, that doesn't matter. That's the first thing I thought when I was thinking that. But I wanted to, because I'd forgotten what time the shooting actually took place.
And Arnold is to be believed.
As Mrs. Arnold was standing in front of the building, she stated she thought she caught a fleeting glimpse of Lee Harvey Oswald standing in the hallway between the front door and the double doors leading to the warehouse located on the 1st floor. She could not be sure that this was Oswald, but she said she felt it was and believed the time to be a few minutes before 12:15 p.m.
So that would be about here. In a subsequent statement, Arnold claimed to have gone outside as late as 12:25, thereby pushing the time for a potential ground floor sighting of Oswald as close as 5 minutes before the shooting. Putting aside the fact that her observation was described as a fleeting glimpse and that she could not be certain of the man's identity, Arnold herself will later deny it ever happened.
That is completely foreign to me. It would have forced me to have been turning back around to the building when, in fact, I was trying to watch the parade. Why would I be looking back inside the building? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Instead, Arnold claimed that this encounter had actually taken place in the 2nd floor lunchroom.
I do not recall that Oswald was doing anything. I just recall that he was sitting there in one of the booth seats on the right-hand side of the room as you go in. He was alone, as usual, and appeared to be having lunch.
Oh.
I did not speak to him,
Never
but I
mind.
recognized him
I'm
clearly.
wrong. Can't keep my see. I was proving to you how this like testimony and recollection is unreliable. I'm proving it myself. I keep thinking that this happened, and I'm wrong too. So like, perfect example.
Accounts is that none of her colleagues reported anything remotely similar. Whether it was the 1st or 2nd floor, Oswald was apparently invisible to everyone but Arnold. Besides, it took Arnold 15 years to relate her revised version of events.
Oh my god.
Not ideal for such a time-sensitive issue.
For real.
That being said, depending on what conspiracy theory you're willing to entertain, there are ways to interpret what Oswald told his interrogators so that it aligns with either one of Arnold's accounts. Take this one, for instance.
Oswald stated he was present for work at the book depository on the morning of November the 22nd.
That was true.
And at noon went to lunch. He went to the 2nd floor to get a Coca-Cola and returned to the 1st floor to eat lunch. Then he went outside to watch the presidential parade.
This claim is interesting because in the early days of the assassination, it appeared to be supported by photographic evidence. But this figure was quickly identified as Billy Lovelady, a man who bore such a close resemblance to Oswald that when footage of Oswald first appeared on television, Lovelady's stepchildren thought it was him.
All right, y'all. Hold on. I can't think clearly and analyze this yet. I gotta summon my powers again. I gotta summon these powers again.
Now, speaking only for myself here, Really? Am I missing something here? Because they're not exactly doppelgangers, right? Anyway, in recent years,
Well, depends on what they're wearing that day. Okay, so the guy on the right, is that what he was wearing that day? Is that when they took this photograph? Like, we see the mugshot. That was done that day, I assume, right? The same day. It was done the same day with Oswald. He's not wearing what the photo is wearing. The center, the background there, right? The circled part. But Billy, he's kind of, I mean, he's got kind of the open shirt. It's got the white shirt, darker over the top. Yeah, I don't think that's Oswald.
Something here because they're not exactly.
I mean, at some point, Oswald probably did. Maybe he did pop out for a minute. You know what I mean? But doesn't necessarily mean he was out there at the time of the shooting.
Doppelgangers, right? Anyway, in recent years, another such figure, this time with even fewer pixels to work with, has once again been the subject of debate. Because this much of a person can't be positively identified, some believe it, therefore, must be Oswald.
Nah.
On the other hand, Oswald explicitly denied watching the motorcade when he spoke with another interrogator, not to mention that his presence outside went completely unnoticed by all those who did watch the motorcade. Now, there's one final account of Oswald's supposed alibi that stands out from the rest. It stands out because it really skirts the line of self-incrimination.
When asked as to his whereabouts at the time of the shooting,
Oswald
stated that when lunchtime came and he didn't say which floor he was on, he said one of the black employees invited him to eat lunch with him, and he stated, "You go on down and send the elevator back up, and I will join you in a few minutes." Before he could finish whatever he was doing, he stated the commotion surrounding the assassination took place. And when he went downstairs, a policeman questioned him as to his identification, and his boss stated that he is one of our employees, whereupon the policeman had him step aside momentarily. Following this, he simply walked out the front door of the building.
If this is
I'm remembering the time, was it last episode or 2 episodes with the elevator thing when he's like, somebody was going down, right? And he's like, hey, make sure you lock it or don't unlock it. But I don't remember it saying like, okay, I'll come join you for lunch. Was that something we heard too? But the guy they're talking about, like, he didn't say they had lunch with him.
Accurate recollection of what Oswald said, he placed himself on a floor above the second at the time of the shooting. While he neglected to mention which floor, he described a conversation between himself and an unnamed black co-worker, which sounds remarkably similar to the one described by Charles Givens. This would mean that Oswald, seemingly by accident, placed himself on the 6th floor during the shooting. After that horribly confusing mishmash of stories, what have we learned? Well, Oswald appears to have contradicted himself by offering multiple alibis. It's also possible that what he said was misunderstood or otherwise misrepresented by the interrogation participants. As mentioned at the beginning of all this, we don't actually know what Oswald said. This is all based on second-hand accounts related days, weeks, or even months after the assassination. But the main takeaway has to be the lack of corroboration.
Right.
With the exception of Carolyn Arnold, a highly unreliable witness, no one laid eyes on Oswald between roughly noon and the shooting. At least, no one inside the Book DePaul story.
Okay, because we saw the outside testimonies, and it looks like that's where we're ending. Okay. All right, I got a few more words for you before you leave. Let's talk about it. All right, we know that people saw figures, right, from outside. People were saying there was a guy over here and there was a guy over there. So we already know that. And I mean, it'd be a good reason to not, I mean, there's a good explanation for not knowing where Oswald was at the end there, because when you look at that little nook in that corner, it's surrounded by boxes. You know, you're not just going to see each other. There's not a line of sight, it looks like, in a lot of ways. So it's pretty easy to hide there for maybe half an hour, right? He's eating there. He's got his lunch, right? And they say he had his chicken bones or something there from his lunch or whatever. But anyway, but yes, the stories are not matching up. And that's why we're still wearing our thinking cap and our protection cap, because it's still a little bit weird. All right. Okay, we got one more part left for this, or at least a part on my side. We got the last 2 chapters. So the next one is called The Lineup. And then it looks like the last section's called The Ending. So we'll see kind of how they end it. Maybe we'll get some conclusions or something. Maybe it's just left completely to us. But nevertheless, this was pretty messy. This was pretty messy at the least. We're not ready to take these hats off yet. So with that, make sure to join me for the 4th and final part of me covering Lemmino's incredibly in-depth researched little documentary here, The Kennedy Assassination. Original video is down below. Make sure, again, you are supporting Lemmino. Probably going to find a whole bunch of other great, docs and stuff like that. If you love this kind of detail, stick around there. All right, we'll see you in the next one. Bye.